The iPhone 8 Plus is going to be turning 2 years old later this year, and while most of you guys probably figured that I mainly use my newer iPhones on a daily basis, you may be surprised to learn that I actually still use the iPhone 8 Plus on a pretty regular basis. What's up guys, my name is Brandon, and today I'm going to be telling you why I still use the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019, and whether or not I think you should buy one this year. So let's start with the basics. The iPhone 8 Plus is the last iPhone to have a home button and the old iPhone look to it. It can easily get mistaken for an iPhone 7 Plus or even an iPhone 6 or 6S Plus by others, but even though it looks older, it's still built better than any of the other iPhones that I just mentioned. It's made of aluminum and glass, but the glass backing just looks more modern and high quality compared to the iPhone 6, 6S, or iPhone 7. Now that doesn't mean that it's more resistant to drops, because with that glass back, if you drop this phone, you're gonna have to shell out a lot of cash to fix it. So that's why I always strongly recommend you guys to wear a case on any phone, but especially a phone with a glass back like the iPhone 8 Plus. And of course, with a glass back means that we do have wireless charging. So if you do have a wireless charger sitting around your house by your bedside or, out in your kitchen or wherever, you can just set it on top of that wireless charger and charge your phone up very quickly and easily. Now, flipping the phone around, you do also have the thick bezels on the top and bottom of the screen on the 8 Plus. So if you are coming from something like the iPhone 10 or anything newer than the iPhone 10, like the 2018 iPhones, and you're looking to downgrade to save money, you're probably going to hate seeing such large bezels after coming from an edge-to-edge display. But of course, if you are coming from something like the iPhone 5, 6, or 7, then obviously the bezels are not going to be a big deal to you because you're already used to them. And speaking of the screen, we do have the older iPhone aspect ratio of 16:9, whereas the aspect ratio on the newer iPhones like the iPhone 10 and newer is 19:5:9. So it is wider and it does make for better article reading in my opinion, and of course viewing videos in their normal 16:9 aspect ratio instead of just filling up the screen like on the newer iPhones. And to get more specific about the display, we do have a 5.5-inch LCD display with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 and a pixel density of 401 pixels per inch. And let me just say that this screen looks awesome for an LCD screen. Even in 2019, after the iPhone XR came out with the Liquid Retina LCD display, there isn't a huge difference. Like when I compare the iPhone 8 Plus to the iPhone XR, I actually sometimes prefer the iPhone 8 Plus over the iPhone XR. When you compare the video quality between the two, the XR may have a slight edge, but when it comes to text and just overall sharpness of the display, I give the win to the iPhone 8 Plus. It looks better in my opinion in certain scenarios over something like the iPhone XR. Now of course it's not going to be as good as something like the iPhone 10, the XS, or the XS Max because we do have OLED panels on those screens, but it is better than something like a 2018 iPhone and the iPhone XR, which is really impressive for a phone that's going to be 2 years old this year. So yeah, since we have such a great display, watching videos on the big 8 Plus is and always has been an excellent experience. The colors are vibrant and the loud stereo speakers also give you a good audio experience as well. Now the iPhone 8 Plus was the first iPhone to get True Tone, which balances out the display based on the environment around you so that the colors are always accurate. And once again, there's just something about that 16:9 aspect ratio that I just love on something like the iPhone 8 Plus. Of course, we have that on the older phones as well, but the 8 Plus is the last one to have that aspect ratio. Now, as for the software and the overall performance, I am currently running the latest beta of iOS 12.1.3 here on my iPhone 8 Plus. And going back to the title of this video, that is the main reason I still use my iPhone 8 Plus in 2019, because it's still a performance beast and I love running the latest software beta versions on this phone. And since I'm loading up the beta versions on this iPhone, that means I'm using it on a weekly basis. I'm using it at least 3 full days out of the week every single week, since obviously we have a lot of betas. I like testing everything, and this is the only iPhone I still use with a home button here in 2019. I did use the iPhone 7 Plus a lot in 2018. I still think it's a great buy, but in 2019, the iPhone 8 Plus is my vote for the most valuable, the best value of an iPhone you can get in 2019. This is the phone to buy if you don't mind having a home button. Now, another thing that I love about the 8 Plus that we don't get on any of the newer iPhones is that you can flip it to landscape mode on the home screen and it looks almost like a mini iPad. Now, I must admit that I don't use this feature too often, but it is awesome just to have that that there as a feature if you wanted to use it. And once again, a big reason you're able to pull this off on something like the iPhone 8 Plus and not on some of the newer phones is because going back to that aspect ratio, we have just a fatter screen, more space horizontally versus vertically. We also have 3D touch on the 8 Plus, which you do not get on the iPhone XR and potentially won't be getting on any future iPhones if the rumors end up being true. And of course, 3D touch is great for quick actions in the control center and also on applications. It's really great for something like the camera and of course all of the actions in the control center platter. And the overall performance on the 8 Plus is just magnificent. It does have Apple's A11 Bionic chipset, which is the same one found on the iPhone X. It does also have 3 gigabytes of RAM, which does make this phone a beast for multitasking and playing CPU intensive games. And if you compare it to something like the iPhone XS Max, you'll see that the difference in speed is very minimal. I mean, apps load up super quick on both phones and games play buttery smooth on both, but the difference is that the iPhone XS Max has the A12 Bionic chip and an additional gigabyte of RAM for 4 gigabytes total, so it is going to perform slightly better on a daily basis and definitely when it's under load, but the difference in speed is not significant at all. And the reality is, if you are looking to buy an iPhone 8 Plus in 2019, you're probably coming from an older phone like the iPhone 5, 5S, 6, 6S, or iPhone, maybe even the iPhone 7. But if you're coming from one of those older phones, you're probably wondering how big of a performance boost you're going to get with something like the iPhone 8 Plus. And let me just tell you, if you're coming from any phone before the iPhone 7, the performance gains you're going to get from the iPhone 8 Plus is massive. You can see that the iPhone 8 Plus is just dominating the iPhone 6 here when I'm running these tests, and it's also much faster than the iPhone 6S and the 6S Plus as well. And the great thing is you're going to be getting years and years of support with the iPhone 8 Plus. It's not like just because it has a home button, Apple's going to stop supporting it in future iOS versions. That's not the case. This phone is going to last you many, many more years. It's so powerful, has a great display. Just because it has a home button does not mean that Apple's just going to stop supporting it all of a sudden. So I would not worry about how long it's going to last at all because it's going to last a very long time. Now, we cannot talk about the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019 without talking about that home button because that can either be, something that you want or that could be a complete deal breaker for you. And in my experience, after using every single iPhone, I personally prefer to have no home button just because I love these swipe gestures. I love Face ID a lot better than Touch ID. But this is something that you're really going to have to test out and make up your own mind because every single person is different. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on whether or not they want a home button. Now, if you are coming from an earlier iPhone than the 8 Plus, then obviously you're already very used to the home button. You probably don't mind the home button. You may even just like the home button and you don't like the gesture controls. In my opinion, again, I like having no home button, but we're going to talk about this debate more near the end of this video. Now, shifting over to the battery life on the iPhone 8 Plus is terrific, and it got even better when iOS 12 got released. So battery life is great on the iPhone 8 Plus. It's noticeably better than any of the previous phones before it, and I actually noticed that it sometimes gets about the same, sometimes even better battery life than my iPhone X. The iPhone 8 Plus has a 2691 milliamp hour battery, and while it's smaller than that of the iPhone X, again, the performance is pretty much just as good. I get around the same battery life, sometimes even better. Now, of course, the 2018 iPhones will get better battery life, but with the price difference, it's really not worth it for less than an hour more of on-screen time. Now, switching over to the camera, we have a dual 12 megapixel camera setup with an f1.8 wide angle lens and also a f2.8 telephoto lens, which of course work perfectly in tandem. We can take 4K 60 video, and we also have portrait mode and portrait lighting. We have quad LED dual tone flash, we have stable OIS, and we also have HDR capabilities. So yeah, the camera is amazing, and it's just as good as my iPhone X camera, and of course it is better than any previous iPhone camera as well, but of course it isn't quite as good as the 2018 iPhones because of the new Smart HDR feature Apple introduced with the iPhone XS and XS Max. You can see here that the images are vibrant, they aren't blown out, and it's just a very reliable camera that you know is going to pump out quality images and also video. So now let's answer the big question, should you buy the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019? And the very first thing you probably need to consider when thinking about purchasing any iPhone really in 2019 is the price. And when I talk about the price, especially the price of the older iPhones, I'm mainly talking about the used condition model. So I would not buy any older iPhone new just because you're going to be overpaying for it, and you can get a mint condition used one for pretty much a half of the price. So yeah, if you are looking to buy an iPhone 8 Plus in 2019, I would buy one used instead of buying a new one from Apple. But of course, when I say used, I want to make sure that you guys get a really good condition one. That way you're not getting one that's all scratched up and shows that it's used. So anyways, you can pick up an iPhone 8 Plus on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or Craigslist in great condition in either 64 or 256 gigabytes for around $500. Now compare that to the either $699 for the 64 gig model or the $849 for the 256 gig model from Apple, and you have a really good bargain. That's way too much for an 8 Plus in 2019. I would never spend close to $900 for an iPhone 8 Plus in 2019. That's just absurd. So I would go for a used iPhone 8 Plus and 256 gigabytes and save yourself $400 in the process. Now the next most important thing you need to consider before buying an iPhone 8 Plus is which device you're coming from. So what device are you currently using? What are you trying to upgrade from to get the 8 Plus? And I'd say that if you're coming from anything earlier than the iPhone 7 or 7 Plus, you should strongly consider the iPhone 8 Plus. But if you have an iPhone 7 or 7 Plus, I would probably not get the 8 Plus because it's not going to be a huge difference for you. I would probably wait for the 2019 iPhone to get announced, and you may want to upgrade to that. And like I mentioned earlier, the biggest deciding factor in getting the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019 is whether or not you want a home button. You're going to have to make the decision if you want a home button or not. And like I said, I personally prefer it just because I like Face ID better than Touch ID, and I also like gestures better than pressing a home button. I think it's quicker, I think it's more fluid, but it may not be entirely for you. So if you don't know how the gesture controls work and you don't know how a newer iPhone without a home button works, I would go into the Apple Store and play around with the new iPhones, even just the iPhone 10, just to get a feel for it and see if that's something you will like. Now, if you think you prefer the gesture controls and you prefer a phone without a home button, then of course I would not get the iPhone 8 Plus. But if you don't mind having the home button and you can save yourself a lot of money, then I would go ahead and get the iPhone 8 Plus because it is a fantastic device. And again, it's the last one with a home button, so you're gonna have the power of the iPhone 10 just with a home button on it. You just need to remember that the phones without a home button are obviously going to cost you more. And again, that is the benefit of getting something like the 8 Plus because it is cheaper than those home button-less phones. So yeah, I hope that helps answer your question as to whether or not you should buy the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019. Obviously, just based on this whole video alone, you should get the 8 Plus over the iPhone 8 for obvious reasons. It's bigger, it's more powerful, and I just prefer, the plus size models. I'm pretty sure everybody these days does as well, at least when it was back to being, smaller like this, not as big as the iPhone XS Max. But yeah, if this video did help you out, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019. Make sure you guys also subscribe to the channel. I will be making a lot more videos, of course, on everything to do with Apple and iPhone. And also in 2020, I'll be making the same video to see if you should still buy an iPhone 8 Plus in 2020. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you soon.